right, good morning everybody. Welcome to In Tune. My name's Leon Harrell. Today we are going to look at Turkey and the Straw as our music example. We're going to talk about counting syncopated rhythms, and I thought that would just be a fun one since we're approaching Thanksgiving. Also today, we got a question in our mailbag about bossa nova rhythms, so we're going to take a look at that. And I added a free example to our Patreon page, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But if you are interested in today's bossa nova example, you can download that for free from our Patreon page. Let's see. Good morning, everyone. I see a lot of folks in our chat this morning. We've got David joining us and Don joining us. Good morning. And Sandy, good morning. Oh, Sandy, you had asked about looking at Joy to the World for our Christmas music. So I loaded that up in our favorites for, we'll probably get to that in a week or two, but I'll show you some arrangements today you might like. Also, we've got, let's see, I think that's it for the moment. If you are joining us for the first time, do say hello in the chat, in the live chat here on YouTube. If you'll just say hello, let me know what instrument you play and where you're located. We have people join us from all around the world, so it's nice to know where you're at. All right, and then we're going to get started. Some announcements before we get rolling. Let's just make a quick look here. I think that's all the announcements I have for today, but I did want to do a quick poll just to ask you, what sorts of things are you struggling with when it comes to learning rhythm? I got a lot of questions in our survey on the Patreon page asking, or rather, I asked people, what content would you like to see in November? And a lot of people said sight reading, a lot of people said counting rhythms. So when it comes to rhythm, let me know what in particular, if there is something in particular that you're struggling with, so we can address that. And if you are watching this on the replay throughout the week, just say a quick hello in the comments. And again, let me know what you're struggling with. Anything you asked during the week, we'll try to answer that during next week's live show, or we may just respond to you live in the comments. And that's where one of our mailbag questions came from today. Okay, so we are going to get started. Awesome, yeah, Sandy, I see that. Perfect, thanks. Joy to the world, excellent. Yeah, right now, exactly. Okay, cool. So we're going to switch into Piano Marvel for just a moment. Okay, and if you've, oops, let me see. Let me fix my screen here. I've got something strange going. Show. Oh, hang with me. We've got a technical glitch. I'm running my Piano Marvel from iPad this morning, and I may just need to reconnect that. All right, and let's see. You know what? Well, give me a moment. We'll just run it from Safari because for some reason my iPad's, it's not cooperating. So that's the beauty of live stream. You never know what's going to happen, and you just have to make it happen on the fly. So we're going to load this up in Safari. If you've been following along with us, we've been looking at Piano Marvel for quite some time, and I'm going to throw a link up on the screen just in case you're interested in that. If you'd like to follow along with us every week as we look at different tools and whatnot, feel free to visit oneminutemusiclesson.com/toolbox. There you'll see links to anything we talk about during the show, and in particular, you'll see a link for Piano Marvel. If you want to try that for 30 days for free, you can do that with our code. And if you decide to continue with the using that product, you'll get 20% off the monthly subscription fee if you decide to move forward using the code. Okay, but we're going to take a look, before we jump into our lesson, I want to look at some things in the music library. So when you load Piano Marvel, this is what it looks like. And if you click on Library, that'll load the music library. And just so you know, there's probably about 25,000 pieces of music in the library. They update that almost every single day that I log in. I see like a new piece of music that's been added. And in particular, every season or every month, sort of whatever holiday's happening, they'll highlight different music in the library. They'll just bring it up to the top. And at this time of year, they highlight the Christmas music because they do a big Christmas competition. So anyone who's a user of Piano Marvel, if you practice and play these songs, things you see here on the music library that have little tickets on them, little golden tickets, those count towards an entry in their monthly contests. So if you're interested in that, play the tunes that have the little golden tickets. That enters you into the contest, and you can track your progress yourself directly in your dashboard or in the reports screen. But that's not what I want to talk about today. I just wanted to mention that. I have put into my favorites a couple pieces just to highlight. So Sandy, I know you had asked about Joy to the World. I want to point out that there is a really simple arrangement, just a level 1. So if you're a beginner of that, so you can just search Joy to the World in the title box right up here. But this one, you'll notice it's just the melody. Melody moves between both hands. All right, the rhythms are very simple. All right, and the words are written in, so that can really help you. If you're not used to counting rhythms yet, or you're just a total beginner, a lot of times it's nice to have the lyrics to the song just so you can figure it out and sing along with it. But I did find another arrangement of it, which was located here. This one's a level 6 arrangement. It's arranged by David Lands. I thought it was kind of a cool arrangement, but it definitely is on the more challenging side. So I'll show that for just a moment. Not the hardest piece of music ever, but it does have a lot of perpetual motion, so you'll just see a lot of repeated notes in there. And not that that's overly difficult, but that can sort of be taxing on your muscles and your wrists if you haven't played piano for a long time. Similar to how guitarists, when they're learning guitar, the calluses will build up on their fingertips. Piano players, your wrists will strengthen over time so you can play repeated notes without tension building up here in your wrist. So that's probably something to be aware of if you're going to tackle this arrangement. But I wanted to point those two out. So if you have some feedback, if you like either one of them or you just want to focus on one of those in particular, let me know. I know I have a tendency to probably show music that tends to be on the more challenging side. So if you want to see something that's more beginner level, just let me know in the comments. We'll definitely accommodate that. And then the last thing, I feel like I saw a third arrangement of it, maybe in Alfred's Premier Piano course. This is just one of their adult beginner courses. Let me just check it real quick to see if this is where I saw that. Let's see. I'm almost positive it was in here somewhere. I could be wrong about that, but I know it's in one of these Alfred books. It may be in the Adult Basics course. Let's take a quick look there. Ode to Joy. Let's see. Oh, here it is, yeah. Page 103, Joy to the World. This one, again, is a very simple arrangement for beginners, but it does have some two-part harmony. This would probably be the one I choose to do the lesson on because it's a little more interesting than just the melody alone. And I don't think it's terribly difficult for a beginner. You don't have a lot of independence of the hands, meaning that you're doing two things at the same time that are more complicated. It's relatively simple. So this is probably the arrangement I'll pick, just FYI. Okay, so that is an update on that. The other thing to look at, I got a question from somebody that said, oh, could we do a lesson on Handel's Passacaglia? This is a beautiful piece arranged by, I'm not sure of his first name, but his last name's Halverson. I don't know that we'll do a lesson on this one just because it's very advanced, but we can talk about some tips of that, so we may trot that one back out closer to the Christmas season. The last thing here, was there one more announcement? No, I don't think so. So we'll move into our piece for today. So we're going to talk about Turkey in the Straw. There's a couple arrangements of that one. Again, so if you've never searched the library, you just type in the search bar, whatever the name of the piece is, or you could search by composer. And the search, you've got filters on the left-hand side, so you may want to reset your filters before you do your search. That way you're not limiting anything. And there's several arrangements of this you'll find in the system. I'm going to play the one today from Grand Favorites for Piano. I think this particular collection is really excellent. There's lots of good tunes in there that are anywhere from beginner to sort of intermediate level, but they're nice arrangements. They're interesting. They're not terribly challenging. And a lot of these pieces have already been reviewed by the Piano Marvel staff, and they've been sliced up using the practice tools in it. One thing to note, if you do find a piece that you're wanting to practice in the system and it hasn't been cut into slices, you can request that. And I did that this week with Turkey in the Straw, and I'm happy to report their team had that prepared and turned around probably in less than 24 hours, which I thought was really awesome. But that's the one we're going to look at. So if you want to load that up, feel free to go ahead and do that. There's another arrangement that's a little bit easier. That's a level 4. This is arranged by the Piano Marvel staff themselves. And then the easiest arrangement I found was in the Let's Play Music collection. This one I think was a level 2 or 3. I'm going to open that one. So you may find that one the most interesting for yourself. So within this one, it's in the Purple Magic book, and that is on page 18. And what's cool about this particular arrangement, it comes in 2 different keys, so you could do it in C or in F, relatively just as simple in either key. But what was really interesting to me, they have the solfege written in. So solfege, of course, is syllables that are assigned to different pitches of the scale. You probably remember that from The Sound of Music, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. But they've written in the solfege. So if you're a person who's looking to practice your solfege and work on your inner ear and your aural skills abilities, this is a great example for that. So again, that was in the Let's Play Music book, and it was in the Purple Magic, the volume for Purple Magic on page 18. All right, but we're going to look at Grand Favorites for Piano today. This one's in book number 4, and it's page 20. Okay, so I'm going to load that up. And we're going to sight read this one together. I'm going to look at this. Let's see, we're going to start with measures 4 through 12 for our sight reading. But before we dive into that, let's just scan through this using our SMART method. So I'm going to load that on the screen so you can see what I'm talking about there. So whenever we look at a piece of music, we like to just go through a sort of standard routine when we do that. And I just call that my SMART sight reading system. All right, and you'll see the acronym here. So it stands for scale, meter, accidentals, range, and tempo. So we're going to look at this piece, and first we'll look at the scale. Then we'll talk about the meter, the time signature. We'll scan through the piece for accidentals and see, what notes are going to be altered when we play it. We'll take a look at the range. This one has a little bit larger range than some pieces we've looked at before, so this is a good example to look at why would you look at the range. And then last, the tempo. How do we prepare ourselves before we launch into playing the piece of music? Okay, this particular piece is in the key of C. There's no time signature, there's no key signature, which tells us it's either in the key of C major or possibly its relative minor, A minor. Let's take a look at the music to see if we could tell, why is that the case? So we're going to switch to Piano Marvel. All right, so looking at the beginning here, we see there's no key signature. All right, and what we're looking for are various context clues to tell us, well, is it in the major or the relative minor? So really the first chord and last chord will often tell us that information. So the first chord we see is C on the bottom, G just above that, another G in the right hand, and a C at the very top. So we've got C and G, which is a perfect fifth. There's no third in the chord. There's no E, but the E is implied, meaning that soon enough we'll see that E. So this turns out that's a C major chord, or if you want to get technical, that's an open fifth. Some people will call that a power chord. All right, and then at the end of the piece, we'll notice, oh, well, this piece ends on a D with a D and an F sharp in the right hand. So we started on C major, and we're ending on what looks to be a D major chord. And you may notice over to the right, it looks like the key signature has changed. So something has happened in this piece of music that we may not have anticipated. There's been a modulation. So we modulated from C to D major. So we're going to scan through to see, well, where did that happen at? Okay, all right, it happened right here. So at measure 21, we've had a new key signature added to the staff. So now we're switching from C major into D major. All right, and if you want to know technically, we just have a half step from the C to C sharp, leading us to the new tonic to the D there. Technically, this is not really a well-formulated modulation. It's not a pivot chord modulation, which is what's typical in most modulations. Some people will call this a direct modulation. I've heard it called a truck driver modulation, meaning that it just bumps right up to the next key. But, you know, we won't get into the weeds of modulation today. All right, so we know the key started in C major. First chord was C major. And if we look at the last chord just before that modulation, we're landing here again on C. So we've got a cadence right into C there. So C major is our key. And we're going to just take a quick look at that from our smart system. And then I also want to show you how could you practice this scale directly in Piano Marvel, because you can. Okay, so on the screen here, we'll see our scale. So we read this clockwise from the top, C, D, E, F, G, A, B. And I encourage you to play this on your instrument a couple times before you sight read the piece. All right, and in order to sort of facilitate that today, I thought we would do it directly in Piano Marvel. So I'm going to go back in. I'm going to switch to our library, and I'm going to open, there's a great scale book that you'll probably just want to add to your favorites because you'll use it all the time if you're wanting to practice scales. And this is the Alfred Scales, Chords, Arpeggios, and Cadences book. So they have a lot of this book is loaded into Piano Marvel. I think they're continuing to load some right now, but this will cover our needs for today. So I'm going to open this one. We're going to open part 2, the major scales for C major. We're going to open this one for C major. And what's really awesome about this that you probably wouldn't notice until you start to dive into it, they have all the different exercises that you would practice for scales and chords and arpeggios and things like that. But it's just going to open up directly to the scale in 2 octaves. So when we look at that, this is what we'll read through this morning. Once you've mastered this exercise, you may be interested to move on to the more advanced exercises. And I'll show you some ones I find particularly challenging, but I loved learning them when I was sort of at this stage of development. Scales in parallel thirds, which sounds like so. Let me turn my instrument on. All right, and scales in parallel sixths, which looks like so. And those can be challenging to learn, but if you've never practiced your scales that way, that opens you up to a whole new world of sound and muscle memory that you're building. It can be kind of challenging when you start, but once you master them, you're so much better at playing scales. But we're going to keep it simple today. We're going to keep it in our parallel motion in octaves. Number 1 here. All right, and what does that mean? Parallel motion in octaves. So the scale here starts on C in the right hand and C in the left hand. All right, and it moves in parallel, so that the musical line is moving up, the pitches are rising, and both the right hand and the left hand are moving up together in the same direction, which is parallel motion. Sort of the opposite of that is contrary motion, where one line goes up, one line goes down. And you can see that in example number 2, the contrary motion example, which is way harder to play. But we'll keep it simple today. Okay, so we're going to play through this one in prepare mode. I'm going to make my window just a little bit bigger so you can see that. And so Piano Marvel has 2 modes. Prepare mode lets you be the driver of the software, which is really great when you're starting out. Assess mode lets the software be the driver, where you have to keep up with the tempo. And that's great when you're ready to measure your performance to see, how well are you progressing. But we're going to do this in prepare mode. And I'm connecting through my MIDI instrument. Today I'm using my desktop computer. So I'm just going to quickly turn that on. And the thing I've noticed, I've got a new Bluetooth connector for MIDI. The one thing I've noticed is that the Bluetooth device goes to sleep kind of often. And that is not a problem, but you just kind of have to get accustomed to it. And I'm not totally accustomed to that. So I'm going to connect to that. And it just takes a second to connect it, but I have found I've had to do that more frequently than I would prefer to do. So I'm going to refresh that connection. All right, connect it to my keyboard, and here we go. So if you're new to the piano, you're just going to play along the notes, the pitches here. And I think it's easier to do that from our Smart System example. But for today's purpose, I'm going to show you in notation using Piano Marvel. And you'll notice here the fingerings are written in for the piano keyboard. If you're ready to tackle that, go right ahead. But if you're brand new, let's not be bogged down by the fingering. I just want you to get accustomed to the sound of the scale. Okay, so we're going to do that in prepare mode. Make that a little larger for you. All right, and here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. All right, so it's read through that for us. And it's always going to grade our performance, whatever we're doing. It tracks all that in the background for us. So let's listen again to the sound of that scale before we sight read today. All right, and let's take a look at it again in our Smart System, just to make that easier. All right, and Don asked a quick question. Which book were you using for the scale? So this is from the publishing company Alfred. Alfred is an old-time favorite in piano teaching, and that is the Alfred Scales, Chords, Arpeggios, and Cadences book. I'll bring that up again on the screen so you can see that. So again, that's directly in Piano Marvel. If we go to the library, if you just search for the word Alfred, you'll find that pretty easily. So I'm going to do that, Alfred. And you're looking for this one here. It says level 5 in the blue bar. It's a picture of a piano, and it says the complete book of scales, chords, arpeggios, and cadences. All right, so good question there. And then another question, David asks, please talk about the staves and sort of follow up to that, bass to treble and back again. Okay, great question. So let's take a look at that. So in that example, you'll notice, particularly in the left hand, there are changes of clef. So here we start out with the bass clef, we move into the treble clef, and back to the bass clef. So the thing to know about reading music from a staff, so the 5 lines you see across from left to right, that's called the staff. Multiple staffs are called staves. The plural is staves. The staff itself is just a placeholder to hold the note heads. The staff doesn't tell you what the pitches are. It's just a way to tell, is it on the line or off the line? And, what location is it from bottom to top? That's really all the staff is doing. What tells you where the pitches are, what notes are the correct pitches, is the clef itself. So we see the treble clef here in the top, the bass clef here in the bottom. And the easy way to remember these, the treble clef is the G clef. It has a little pointer that wraps around the G line, and every note on that line is a G. And then you can figure out, using the rest of the alphabet, just moving up and down alphabetically, what the other notes are. Likewise, the bass clef is the F clef, and it has a little dot here that rests on the F line, and it's sort of neighbored with these 2 dots around it. And that establishes where is the F on the clef. Well, the thing you may not know is both of these clefs can actually be moved. They don't have to rest on the second line from the bottom. They can rest on any line that you see there. So if we look at older music, we'll find music written in the soprano clef, where the treble clef symbol is moved to a different line. The bass clef can be written in a different location as well. And then there's other clefs you'll see, the alto clef and the tenor clef. Those are pretty uncommon in piano music, but you'll find tenor clef in cello music, alto clef you'll find in viola music quite a bit. You may ask yourself, well, why are there different clefs? Why do they move around? What's the purpose of that? Well, the purpose is a lot of things in music come back to the idea of conservation of motion or conservation of visual information. So in the case of clefs, you put the clef that will keep the notes within the staff so that we don't have to use ledger lines. So an example of a ledger line is up here. You see we needed extra little lines to tell us what this note was, the C. Well, depending on the clef, you may need more or less of those ledger lines. So in music publishing, your goal is to conserve visual information. So we want to keep as many notes in the staff as we can, provided we're putting the correct note there. So that's exactly why the bass notes here transition over to the treble clef. Because if we did not do that, and you don't have to, like I say, it's just a publishing convention, it's not like a hard rule. All of these notes in this left-hand bottom here would have to be written on ledger lines, and we would have 4 and 5 and maybe 6 ledger lines above. It gets really hard to read ledger lines when there's more than 4 of them, and 4 is really hard. A lot of times you want to keep it to 2 ledger lines above or 2 ledger lines below. So when you get beyond that, it just gets challenging to read the material. So that's why the clef changes. So then the next question might be, well, how do I read the notes? So all we're doing is, in the first measure in the left hand, we're reading these pitches in the bass clef. All right. And then when they switch over to this area, now the pitches are written in the treble clef. All right. And as a beginner or a new sheet music or sight reader, that's not an easy change to just switch in your mind very quickly between the two. So, be patient with yourself and be patient with the learning process there. You won't see that a lot. The good news with scales is that once you master one scale, the patterns and concepts are going to apply to all scales. So it doesn't take long to get over that learning hurdle. Another question coming in. Okay, great. Good deal. So David just says, great answer. Thanks. So let's take a look at this. We're going to switch from the music notation in Piano Marvel back to our smart system. I just like to show our scales written with the pitches in a circle. And the reason I do that is all the information we need to know is what the pitch is. And regardless of what instrument we play, we could read it from this chart here and play from C, moving clockwise around, up to the C above, depending on the range of your instrument. And we don't need to be bogged down with the staff itself. But of course, we also want to read the staff as well. But this helps us understand it more, maybe from a music theory point of view. And as we get into more complicated ideas of music theory, this circle graph becomes much more useful as we do that. But we're going to do one last time through the scale before we sight read today. And we'll say the notes out loud as we do it. So we're going to do this one together slowly, just one octave or one time around the circle. All right, and we'll just do a one measure count off. So here we go, and speaking the pitches along with me. 1, 2, 3, 4. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And then we'll repeat it coming down, starting with the C again, reading counterclockwise. C, C, B, A, G, F, E, D, C. All right? So we're practicing this scale for a couple reasons. We're getting accustomed to the sound of the scale. So we want to know a major scale sounds like that. All major scales sound the same. They're just at different, in different keys or different transpositions. And we're also learning the names of the pitches. So C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, the pitch labels themselves. As we're playing it on our keyboard, we're learning the location of the notes on the keyboard. And then finally, we're learning the muscle memory or the actual physical movement of the fingers as we play the scale. Muscle memory is every time we play through something slowly and deliberately and we're very focused on what we're doing, we're actually building new neural pathways in our brain to be able to make our fingers move exactly in the way we want them. And as we practice the piano or any instrument more, you develop more and more muscle memory to the point where at some point you can play a scale without having any conscious thought at all. You can just move your hands and your brain is not actually doing any thinking. It's just repeating patterns that it's already done. It's kind of like tying your shoe. When you tie your shoe, you don't always think, oh, left, right, make an ear, wrap it around. You don't have to do all that conscious thinking because you've built up the muscle memory over many years. All right, and it can be developed very quickly if we know how to practice with intention. Okay, so that's our C major scale, and that takes care of that. Let's move on to our meter. Our meter in this example is in 4/4, which is a simple meter. And if you're not aware, there's two main types of meters. Simple meter, where the beat divides into two equal pieces, like so. Or there's compound meter, where the beat divides into three equal pieces. And if those two concepts are kind of foreign to you and you just want to learn more about that, I have a great book that you can learn how to read music easily in 30 days. This book will take you through all the detail we've talked about today and lots more, but it will break it down step by step in a 30-day program that will really take you from a total beginner to actually learning a large amount of information about music and music theory. So check that out at oneminutemusiclesson.com/book if you're interested in that sort of thing. All right, but when we're talking about meter, the key thing to think about here, so the time signature is 4/4, and the way you read that is the top number tells us how many of the bottom number's note value. So the 4 on top means play 4 of these, and then the bottom number 4 is telling us, think about it as a fraction. So if we think of the number 1/4, 1/4, a fourth is a quarter of a circle. So that's the quarter note. So the bottom 4 tells us it's a quarter note. The beat equals a quarter note. So 4 quarter notes in a measure. And I show that graphically here. We just read it again clockwise. So as we count it, we count 1, 2, 3, 4 around the circle. And because it's a simple meter, not a compound meter, we're going to need to divide that into 2 equal pieces when we count. So we'll count 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and we'll see that in our example with Turkey in the Straw. Okay, so that's just how we divide and count rhythms in simple meters. They work differently in compound meters. All right, the next thing we're going to do is look at our range. So we're going to load up Turkey in the Straw quickly and look at the range. And I mentioned this particular one has a larger range than some of the pieces we look at. So you'll notice the piece starts right out on a pretty high C. This is C 2 octaves above middle C. All right, so that is pretty high in the piano's range. And as we scroll down through the piece, we're looking for our lowest note. So this G is getting kind of low. Here's a very low note, so there's 2 ledger lines below the staff. And we're looking to see, is there anything lower than that? And no, 2 ledger lines below is the lowest pitch in the piece. All right, so we've got from 2 octaves above middle C to 2 octaves below middle C. So when we're looking at the range, we're accomplishing 2 things here. One, we're trying to position our body at the keyboard in the middle of that range. And the reason you do that is so that your hands, when you're seated at the keyboard, you don't want to be leaning way over here and your hands are over there, or vice versa. Your body wants to be in the middle so that your hands and your arms are sort of centered with your body while you're playing. But beyond that, when we're sight reading, if the range of the music is very wide, we want to know in advance, well, do I need to lean over to the right or lean over to the left? So that we're just prepared to read the music. If the music's way up high in the treble clef all the way to the right of the keyboard, but you're seated so far to the left that you're stretching your entire body to reach it, A, it's uncomfortable, but B, it's just taking away from our mental ability to process information, which is a hindrance to sight reading. Okay, some comments coming in. Oh, David said not seeing the music. Let me make sure. Sorry, let me switch that back over. Thank you for letting me know. It's a lot of buttons and whistles going on in this live stream software. Okay, good. So I'm just going to point that out again. The lowest note is the C 2 octaves below. And the highest note at the beginning, the C 2 octaves above middle C. So we're really just going to position ourselves in the middle of that, which is middle C, right in the middle of the keyboard. Okay? All right, so moving along. Today we're going to wrap up by sight reading measures 4 through 12 first. So this is example number 2. We're going to do it at 60 beats a minute. All right, we're going to skip over the intro, and we're just going to start right here. Measure 4 on beat number 4. That's the melody note. All right, and we're going to read through measure 12. So if you are new to sight reading, I don't want you to feel as though you have to read this with no kind of help at all. Give yourself a chance to listen to the piece one time. So we're going to do that for this exercise, measures 4 through 12, just by clicking Assess. All right, and allowing it to play and just taking a... All right, and I'm going to count along with it this time. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3. All right, so if you're brand new to sight reading or playing the keyboard, start really simple. Just count along with the music while it plays in assessment mode. And one thing to know, I noticed this last week in my replay, there was a little bit of a delay between my live audio through my microphone above me and my computer's audio, which is playing that keyboard sound. So if I'm a little bit out of sync with the counting, that's what's up, and I'm trying to solve that problem, but I don't know if it's having that problem until after I see the replay. But we're going to count that again. I'm going to play this in prepare mode. All right, and I'm going to count it and play it at the same time. If you are a very beginner, focus on reading just the right hand. So we're starting on beat 4, 4 and 1, 2, 3 is that first rhythm. All right, if you are a little more advanced than that, try the left hand, add it in. Or if you're really just working on your bass clef reading, just read the bass clef. All right, so we're going to do this. I like to count off 2 measures every time to establish our tempo. And here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 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 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. That G was tricky. I'm going to point that out to you. So here at measure 11, there's a change to a G in the bass. And one thing about playing keyboards and piano music, or really any music, once a pattern is established, it's really easy to just play the pattern versus what you're actually reading. And this is a moment where that happens. The C had been repeated so many times, I was just naturally inclined to play that. Okay, I'm going to do that one more time so you can follow along. All right, so we're going to do that one more time in prepare mode. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3. 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so that is the sort of verse section of the song, and now we're going to jump to the chorus part. So that is in our practice module number 3. We'll do that again, probably at 60 beats per minute. Okay, and this is where we see the syncopation, so I want to talk about that for a moment. Notice here in measure 13, okay, we have a syncopated rhythm, and what do I mean by that? Syncopation means that rather than music that's written all on the beat, so if that's our tempo, ba ba beep ba 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 beep ba ba. Everything we're doing with that verse section of the song is accented on the beat, whereas syncopated rhythms are accented off the beat. So you'll notice that we'll have notes that happen in the middle of the beat, and then spaces where there would be a beat, but there's no sound. So for example, on the and of beat 1, we're accenting this G note, whereas beat 2, we would expect there to be some sort of note happening on beat 2, but there's not. So a syncopated rhythm in this measure will sound like this. Ba 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 ba. So syncopated just means that there's an accent in the middle of the beat somewhere, and there's an absence of sound on the beat somewhere. And there's lots of variations to that, but this is a really typical syncopated rhythm pattern. So how would we count that? So we still count it all the same way. There's really only one counting system you need to use. So we're counting on beat 1, and then this ties over to beat 2 because it's 2 8th notes. So and 2, where there's just an empty space here. And then the and of beat 2 for this 8th note. Beat 3, beat 4. So it sounds like this. 1 and a 3 4. 1 and a 3 4. Because beat 2, there's silence at beat 2, or the pitch is just being held over at beat 2. So if we wanted to count it by counting the beat 1 2 3 4, but clapping the rhythm, it'll sound like this. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. Try that with me. So just clapping ta 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 ta. That's the rhythm, and then we'll count it. 1 and a 3 4. 1 and a 3 4. Okay, so that's the rhythm. We're going to go ahead and sight read that now. It measures 13 through, let's see, what is that? 13 through 20. Okay, here we go. In prepare mode. 1 2 3 4, and 1 2 3 4. 1 and a 3 4. 1 and a 3 and 4. 1 and a 3 4. 1 and a 3 4 4. 1. Sorry. 4 1 2 3 4 1 1. Wow, 1 1 2 3 4, and 1 2 3 and 4, and 1 2 3 4, and it starts to modulate on that last beat there. All right, so that was a tricky one, and I'm probably not fully awake this morning with my sight reading, but let's break that down a little more. So this is I think the hardest part of this is going to be reading the notes in parallel 6 here through measures 16 and 17. So let's make this a little simpler. Let's go into practice mode. Let's do measures 13 through 20, but let's look at the minced mode. 13 through 20, right hand only. All right, it's going to make it a little simpler for us to sight read. Okay, so we're just going to play the right hand. All right, and we're going to count that syncopated rhythm again. 1 and a 3 4. 1 and a 3 4. And this is a great example because it just repeats that syncopation several times. Okay, here we go. 1 2 3 4, and 1 2 3 4. 1 and a 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 3 4. 1 and 2 and 3 4. 1 2 3 and 4, and 1 2 3. I'm going to do that one more time a little slower. I think I went into double time for just a moment there. Let's try it one more time. 1 2 3 4, and 1 2 3 4. 1 and 2 and 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 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then it'll go into modulation after that. Okay, so we've broken that down just a little bit with the right hand alone. Wrapping up this piece, I want to look at measures 1 through 4 and measures 41 through 44. So 1 through 4. This is the introduction to the piece. Okay, and the introduction, measures 1 through 4 here, it repeats itself in measures 41 through 44. So let's just look at that too. But we're just in the next key of D major. And it's not a literal repetition. It's not exactly the same, but it's very similar rhythmic content and melody contour there. So once we look at measures 1 through 4, you're sort of prepared to practice the other measures. Okay, so looking at just this first 4 measures, we're going to sight read that. This is going to be some challenging sight reading because your hands are going to be spread pretty far apart on the keyboard. And good news is I've ordered my webcam for overhead so you can see my keyboard. I expect to get that within a week or two, hopefully maybe by the next episode. It's challenging when you sight read things where the hands are spread far apart because you can't see both your hands and the keyboard and the sheet music at the same time. So what you want to practice doing is using your thumbs. You're just going to locate the note that your thumb is playing. In the left hand, that's going to be this G. All right, so we'll place our thumb on that note. In the right hand, our thumb is going to be playing this G on the bottom, or we could use our index finger, our pointer finger. It's telling us that with the fingerings written in. But what I'm getting at is you want to find the 2 notes that are the closest together on the keyboard, those 2 notes, and you want to position your hands correctly with those notes because you can't really keep your eye focused on the outside notes. It's much easier to keep your eye focused on the inside notes because they're closer together in the keyboard. Okay, question rolling in here. This is from David. He says, measure 4 bass clef, is that a grace note? Yes, that is. So David's question is, this is actually on beat 2. So in measure 4, and maybe that's what you said. Yeah, measure 4, you're right. So measure 4, beat number 2. Right here is a grace note. It's a tiny little note, and the Italian word for that is appoggiatura. In American music, we'll call it a grace note, but around the world, you might hear the word appoggiatura. Really, that just means squeeze in this note right on top of the next note. So sort of crush the note. That's what appoggiatura means. So it's just a very quick playing of the note. Some people will actually slide their finger. So if I was to play that with the thumb only, I would place my thumb on the C sharp and just slide it off to the D. So I'm really just placing the thumb on C sharp and then sliding it down. All right, and that's a very smooth motion. This is telling you to play it with finger number 2, the pointer finger, and then the thumb on D. It sounds exactly the same no matter how you choose to play it. Beginners, I think it's easier to do it with 2 different fingers. But as you get more advanced, the sliding of the finger is a little bit easier in some styles of music. Okay, but let's go ahead and sight read this. Pick a clef. If you're a total beginner, go ahead and focus on the left hand. That's super easy to count. If you want a little bit more challenge, count the right hand. All right, but just be aware, these first 4 measures, huge range on the keyboard. So our hands and arms are moving, which can be more challenging. Okay, here we go in prepare mode. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, I'm going to play that one more time so you can hear it. All right, and you'll notice that grace note, ba-dum, bum. It's just a very quick crushing of that first note into the second note. All right, so let's do that one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so off there. Okay, so this is some pretty challenging sight reading. If this is above your level, check out some of the other arrangements of Turkey in the Straw and Piano Marvel. They're going to be much easier to approach if you found this one to be challenging. But again, I don't like to discourage people from only looking at music that's really super simple and right at the level they're at, because when you learn different sight reading techniques, what you're learning is how do I approach things that are more difficult or outside of my comfort zone. And I think it's just encouraging for students to try a variety of music and different things, especially when they're sight reading. And you can always work towards reading music that's maybe more difficult than what you're comfortable with, but it just takes some intentional practice. And by that, I just mean slow and deliberate, broken down into small pieces. And Piano Marvel's great for that, especially with all their slicing options. Okay, so let's wrap this up. I'm just going to play measures, putting it all together. Let's do measures 1 through 20. Then we'll move into our mailbag. We might have just a few minutes extra today on our show. Okay? Here we go from the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and a 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 3. 3, 4. 1 and 2 and the 3 and sorry, I'm all off track here. Let's start that measure one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Excellent. Okay, so this is challenging sight reading, and take it apart, do it as slow as you need to each time. I am certainly struggling with measures 17 through 19. I would go back and practice that one a couple times slower. In particular, these parallel sixths from the previous measure, moving into these fifths here, that just needs a little bit of work. There's a lot of motion happening, and especially this is contrary motion like we talked about with the scales. Contrary motion for me just happens to be something that's harder to sight read, but everybody has their different odds and ends that are challenging for them when they're sight reading. Okay, that is going to wrap us up for Turkey in the Straw. The last thing I want to talk about today is our mailbag. Someone asked me a question. I think this was Linda had asked, could you do a little lesson on bossa nova rhythms? And I looked at some examples this week, and honestly, bossa nova rhythms where you have the left hand, bum, 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 then you've got the right hand. That is a challenging syncopated rhythm, and it was nice to do that at the same time as this Turkey in the Straw example, because bossa nova is sort of the epitome of syncopation. So what I put together, if you're following us on our Patreon page, which you can find us at oneminutemusiclesson.com/support. I'll throw a link up on in a moment for that. You can download this example I'm going to show you and load it into Piano Marvel yourself. So I'm going to go to the dashboard. I'm going to my library. And in my favorites, I have uploaded a bossa nova scale exercise. And again, you'd have to download this from our Patreon page and upload it. You'll see instructions there into Piano Marvel. But when we look at this example, I'm going to play it for you one time just through the assessment tool. You'll see a typical bossa nova rhythm, and what I've done is created just using major seventh chords. It'll sound like so, etc., and it'll go up and down the C major scale. This exercise is wrapping up tons and tons of things into one exercise, and I don't know if I would call it simple because it took me a while to practice this week to get pretty fluid at it, but I definitely loved doing it in Piano Marvel because I could break it down and do it much more easily playing along with it in the system than doing it myself. So rather than going into the weeds of that, I'm just going to play for you in assessment mode so you can listen to it.
1, 2, set, go.
Oh, I'm sorry. I noticed I didn't switch over so you can't see that on the screen. Let me switch over so you can see that. So I'm gonna repeat myself a little bit. So we're gonna go into my music library where I have already uploaded this bossa nova scale example. All right, it looks like so. All right, and just FYI, if you want to make your notes bigger or smaller, Control plus or minus changes the size of the notes. So I'm going to hit assessment again so you can listen to that.
1, 2, set, go.
Great, I'm going to pause it there. So basically this example is just going to go up and down the C major scale on seventh chords, which if you're not aware of what that means, it just means notes arranged with the root of the chord, the 1, the third of the chord above it, the fifth of the chord above it, and then the seventh of the chord above it. So we're including the root and the seventh. All right, so that's what makes it a seventh chord. There's lots of flavors of seventh chords, and we could spend hours talking about that. But in this example, all we're doing is planing or playing one shape on the keyboard and just moving our hand by retaining the same shape up and down the keyboard. That's called planing. All right. All right, so in this bossa nova example, if you're a total beginner and you want to count along just the left hand. 1, a 3, a 1, a 3. If you're wanting to go more advanced, count the right hand. 1, 2, and 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. So it's a much more challenging rhythm to count than the turkey and the straw. But the beauty of this example is the first two measures repeat throughout the entire example. So once you get the first two measures, you're just repeating it. I will say that the synchronization of the left and the right hand is quite challenging to get it perfected. So practice this very slowly, very deliberate, intentional practice there. Okay, I'm going to cut it off at that for today's mailbag and then wrap up the show. So last couple things I just want to say is, let's see, we're wrapping up Thanksgiving music this month. I think we'll do the Thanksgiving prayer next week as we gather together. You probably have heard that hymn, or if not, you might recognize it when you hear it next week. And Other announcements very quickly. I like to always say a very special thank you to our patrons. If you want to learn more about how you could support our show, if you enjoy watching, visit oneminutemusiclesson.com/support. We say a very special thank you to our patrons because you're helping us achieve our mission to teach music literacy around the world. So thank you very much to our patrons. And again, on our Patreon page, you can find today's Bossa Nova example if you want to download and put that into Piano Marvel yourself. Okay, so that's going to be it. If you have some questions, I'm happy to stick around in the chat window, so go ahead and throw those out. If not, that's going to wrap us up. So I'm just going to make sure there's nothing hanging out here. So I just see some comments from Don. Oh, awesome, Sandy. I see your comment. I like music theory. I'm glad you pointed that out. Yeah, I like to always try to cover some music theory in every lesson because that really, when you understand the theory, the playing and the application is so much easier to understand. Thank you, David. Applause. I love it. Okay, cool. Good deal. If you are... Oh, hey, James. James is in there, too. Hey, good to see you, James. Great lesson. Enjoying the book, too. Excellent. Thank you so much, James. I appreciate that. That's going to be it for today. If you're catching us, again, like I said, on the replay, post your questions in the replay, and we'll try to get to those in our next episode. We meet every Saturday at 10 a.m. Central Time, and that is going to be it for... today's 1-minute music lesson for Intune. Dave is asking a quick question. Care to talk about the lag? David, if you'll let me know what you mean by that. I think what you're talking about may be the lag between the audio where I'm speaking into the mic versus the audio in the computer. I'm just going to dive into that when I watch the replay this week to see if I can figure that out, if it's still causing that lag. But if it does, let me know in the comment. Just say, yes, your audio's lagging or something like that. Okay, that's going to be it. You guys have a great week. I'll see you again next Saturday for another episode of In Tune. Take care. Bye-bye.